the myth. Sorry about that. The great myths of the Slavic gods. Now I'm just going to forward a link, 1 second, and I want to take you on that journey actually onto the Teachable platform, 1 second. So I'm putting this link in the chat group. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing where you're joining us from. It's always a pleasure to see people from Florida, California, Los Angeles, Virginia, Ontario, Canada. We have a lot of Floridas today: Nebraska, Oregon, Maine, Canada, BC, Canada, Indiana. Very, very cool. So thank you for sharing. So if you guys can actually click on this link, or maybe I can share my screen. Let me see. Desktop. 1 second. Okay, so shared screen. I'm going to take you guys to this page. So this is the link that I just put in the chat. It's the landing page for the special that we have today, just exclusively for the webinar attendees. It's a buy one, get one free. So you pay for one course, but you get a bonus course gratis on us. It costs $244. And actually, if you click on either of these courses, you'll see what it entails. I'm going to take you guys on the fairy tale one. So here you have a breakdown of, for example, Pavel Dobzhinsky, the father of the Slovak fairy tale. He took it upon himself, his personal mission actually, to travel across the regions of Slovakia, to listen to the common people and to document a lot of the lore that they passed on to one another in their communities, of course, to their children. And he codified this in several books that are now just such a treasure trove of Slovak fairy tale legends today, but that wasn't the case in Magyarization. So there's a brilliant introduction to him here. In addition to, you'll see a selection of fairy tales. For example, I'll take you to the Magic Lamp. Here we invite you to read the story. You get to listen to the story also in the Slovak language. That's Dr. Gabriela's voice recording it. So it's an opportunity to also hear the fairy tale in the native language. And of course, our favorite part is actually where we deconstruct the symbolism and the meaning, the greater meaning behind the story, which often taps into this ancient Slavic lore, which we're going to be covering today with Petr Kuzmishin. So if you are interested, I really invite you to click on that link that I put in the comments and to check it out. And don't just check out the Slovak fairy tales, which I'm trying to take you back from. Okay, I'm going to exit here, stop sharing. But also the Slavic mythology decoded page. So you get the holistic overview. So Dr. G, I hand it over to you now. If you could introduce our very special guest, Weleslaw.
Thank you, Zuzi. Just a couple more people joining. So hello and welcome everyone. It's beautiful Sunday here in Slovakia, and we hope that you've been enjoying the spring, which we are going to dive into in just a moment. We will cover the late spring and the early summer with Petr Weleslaw Kuzmishin, who is, just a second, so I return back to our presentation slides. A published author of 3 books on the topic. They have become bestsellers in Slovakia. They're very popular because they are this theme that's and the topic that is not so explored, or definitely not as much as other mythologies such as the Greek one or the Roman ones. He narrates it in a very accessible way. So his publications are very popular in Slovakia. We are hoping to join forces with Weleslaw and create something for you in the English language. Before we do that, so let me introduce Petr Weleslaw Kuzmishin himself, who is also the founder of the Sacred Grove of the Native Faith. So it's a community that comes together to revive and sort of pour a new life into these ancient practices and customs of the Slavic native faith. So he will guide us today through the late spring and early summer customs, rituals, and festivities in the Slovak language, and I'll be translating for you into English so that you know what to expect. There will be a room for questions and answers at the end of the event. During the course of the event, we would like to ask you to keep yourselves muted so that nothing disrupts the flow of the presentation. And you will have an opportunity to ask us or Weleslaw question at the end.
And just to jump in there very quickly, because it's a recurring question with every webinar that we have. Yeah, thank you, Gabby, for taking it to this page. So these are Weleslav's books, 3 of the most popular ones. Unfortunately, they're not yet translated into English, so they're only available in Slovak. Hopefully that will change in the near future, also thanks to your support and interest. And if there is an interest, we'll certainly look into what it would be like to have it translated. But as Gabby said, we're looking to co-create with him. So sorry for that.
Thank you for the feeling, Suzy. And Weleslaw, vítajte. Môžete sa odtíšiť, prosím vás?
Tak. Fajn. Už sa počujeme?
Už sa počujeme. Môžete ísť rovno na to.
Tak, krásny dobrý deň želám. Ako už bolo povedané, moje meno je Weleslaw, civilným menom Peter Kuzmišina. Dnes by som vám rád porozprával niečo o slovanstve, či ich pôvodnej viere Slovanov ešte z predkresťanských časov. Ja osobne sa zaoberám obnovou pôvodnej predkresťanskej viery Slovanov už hádam 20 rokov. Napísal som, ako bolo povedané, niekoľko kníh. Založil som náboženskú obec Svetohaj rodnej viery, ktorej cieľom je práve obnova predkresťanskej viery Slovanov, ako aj vykonávanie obradov, rituálov a slávenie predkresťanských sviatkov.
So very briefly, Weleslaw has been devoted to this topic, to the revival of the pre-Christian Slavic faith. For over 20 years. He is the founder of the community that I had already mentioned that is dedicated to bringing this ancient wisdom as well as the rituals back to life. If you haven't joined one of our webinars with Weleslaw before, he is a great storyteller. So we do recommend that you have a cup of coffee or tea ready, because we tend to run well over an hour with the way Weleslaw takes you on the journey. So hopefully not 3 hours like our first one. So Weleslaw, môžete.
OK, dnes vám niečo poviem o pôvodnej viere Slovanov a zameriame sa dnes na obdobie skorého leta, od príchodu jarnej rovnodennosti až do letného slnovratu, a teda príchodu samotnej jary až vlastne a samotného leta, čo vlastne môžeme nazvať takým slovanským letom, ktorého vrcholným sviatkom bola oslava letného slnovratu, po ktorom leto síce pokračuje, ale vlastne už sa preklapa do jeho druhej fázy.
So today we will look at the rituals and customs as they might have been, possibly would have been celebrated by our ancient predecessors before the arrival of Christianity. And we will cover the period after Easter. So that's late spring and early summer, but to our predecessors, this would have been kind of the height of the summer that escalates with the summer solstice. And then the summer moves into its second half. So its peak, its escalation point was on June 21st, and this is the time we will look at today.
Obrady spojené s jarnou rovnodennosťou ukončujú vládu zimy, a teda bohyňa Moreny, a vlastne nastáva príchod jarnej bohyne Vesny, ktorá vlastne vrcholila práve Veľkdňom, o ktorom sme si hovorili v minulom webinári, a následne pokračujú oslavy boha Jarila, ktorý je stelesnením boha Slnka, Dažboga, alebo jeho takou jednou takou staršou z tvári, ktorý zvíťazil nad, podľa legend, nad temným drakom, takým temným božstvom, ktoré vlastne chcelo získať moc nad našim svetom. A a tak.
So the one of the most important days of the year to our ancient predecessors was the vernal equinox, because that marked the beginning of spring and the arrival of light back into our world. Then it continued with Velikdeň, or today known as Easter. We covered these in our past webinar with Weleslaw. So if you're interested in that, look at the course, Slavic Mythology Decoded, that Zuzana already presented to you, because all our webinars are with Weleslaw are part of that course. So after the Easter, after Velikdeň, the celebration of spring continued with the god Jarilo, who is kind of one of the versions or embodiments of the sun god Dashbok. So it was at this time of year, before Easter and during Easter, that people were parting with winter, with goddess Morena. Then Vesna, the goddess of spring, arrives, and after that comes this god Jarilo, who, according to the legends, fought a dark deity in the form of a dragon that wanted to gain power over in our world and rule it, but Jarilo confronted him and won, luckily, so spring could return.
A tento oslavný deň sa volal Dňom hada. Na jednej strane to temné božstvo bolo kvázi hadom, ktoré Jarilo poráža. Na druhej strane vychádza to aj z takých reálnych vecí, ktoré sa začínajú diať v prírode. Tento deň hada bol 24.4. zhruba v tomto období a je dňom symbolického, ale aj skutočného odomykania zeme, začiatkom poľnohospodárskych prác a je takým symbolickým prelomovým dňom medzi zimou a letom. Totižto počas tohto dňa reálne, skutočne v tento deň na 100% zo zeme začínajú vychádzať jašterice, hady, alebo po tomto dni vlastne ožíva celá tá zem. A na Slovensku máme také porekadlo, že pred týmto dňom čokoľvek aj zasadíte do zeme, tak môžete to ťahať kliešťami a nepodarí sa vám to, ale po tomto dni rast už nezastavíte. Už všetko rastie, všetko je odomknuté, život je ako keby na novo rozbehnutý a všetko vychádza von.
So Jarilo claims his victory over the dark deity in the form of a snake or dragon around 24th of March, or of April, sorry. This coincides with the festivities of St. George. So this is a layer of Christianity that was added to these customs later. Nevertheless, in the folk wisdom and in the folk practice, this was not just a metaphoric beginning of spring. It was also, this legend was based on some natural facts that could be observed at this time of year. So on St. George's Day, the earth opens, and this is the beginning of spring work in the fields. But on this day, also lizards and snakes start to appear, emerging after their winter sleep. So it literally is the time when snakes, a little version of a dragon would appear. Hence, that legend, that myth was created of the dark deity appearing in the form of a snake to be defeated by Jarilo that we see over here.
There is more koš at the moment. Anyway. A práve had je videný pred Jurom, mal potom rôzne čarodejné využitia v rôznych rituáloch. Dôležité však je, že v rámci oslav Juraja sa praktizovali v tento deň rôzne hry. Nie len deti, ale aj dievčatá bili vence, z ktorých si potom veštili výdaj. Mládenci sa zabávali už vlastne takými prvými výjazdmi na koňoch a na statku von zo stajní a zápolili v pestných súbojoch, lukostrelbe a rôznych takých chalanských alebo mužských zápoleniach, kde preukazovali svoju silu a zručnosť.
So snake, it's a very important symbol of this day that also had its place in the rituals that once took place at this time of year. But St. George's Day is also marked with various other kinds of celebrations and festivities. Girls would weave flower wreaths, and from that they would try to tell their future, their husband, their wedding. Boys, on the other hand, would engage in all kinds of competitions to show off their prowess and the skills. So this could be archery, riding on horses, taking out the livestock and the horses out into the fields, into the pastures for the first time in the year, but also sort of wrestling, anything that could show off, how nimble, how capable they are, because this is after all the fertile time of year.
A v tento deň, skôr ako sa rozhoreli vátry a začala sa zábava, bola také obrady, ktoré vzdávali úctu Matke Zemi, bohyni Mokoš, kde napríklad skoro ráno gazdina šla na potok, nazbierala niekoľko kamienkov podľa toho, koľko mala statku alebo zvierat v domácnosti, a na konci jesene ich hodila späť do potoka s prosbou, aby vlastne gazdovstvo po zime malo znovu toľko zvierat, ako je kamienkov v potoku. Pri sviatočnom obrade ľudia chodili dookola polí a sadov, kde spevom, modlitbou, rozjímaním prosili bohyňu Mokoš o hojnú úrodu. A v tento deň sa zvyčajne začínala aj obradná orba, pri ktorej plúch a často aj oráč bol obliatý vodou, živou vodou, a do prvej brázdy sa zaorávali obetiny z predchádzajúcich sviatkov, ako Veľkdeň, čiže chlieb, škrupiny z vajíčok, z kráslic alebo samotné kráslice.
So the other deity that plays prime role at the end of spring is goddess Mokosh, who can see here on the left. On this day, or around this day, there would be ceremonies and rituals dedicated to her. For instance, women would gather as many little pebbles of stones into their aprons as there were animals in the on their farm, and these would be kept throughout the winter or throughout the season, and then would be returned to the stream or the river, with a prayer being said that may there be as many pieces or as many animals as there are pebbles in my apron, or now returned to the river at the end of winter. So may all the animals survive through the hard time of the year. The other customs that we see commonly, and that were commonly practiced, was the first ceremonial plowing of the fields. On this occasion, special sacred foods from the Easter table or from Velикдень would be placed into the soil in order to ensure its fertility, so such as the eggs, eggshells, but also cheese or butter that were served. at Easter, the farmers as well as the equipment would be doused with fresh water, symbol of life, symbol of goodness, to sort of bring good luck to the family, to bring all the fertility and prosperity to the fields.
Nieraz po vykonaní tejto orby traduje sa, že gazda a gazdina vykonali obradnú kopuláciu na roli, čím mali vlastne posvetiť svoju pôdu a zabezpečiť tak dobrú úrodu. V neskoršom období však tento zábavný obrad nahradil takzvaná symbolická svadba mužskej postavy v maske s dreveným falusom so ženou, ktorá imitovala graviditu a pôrod.
It is said that on this day ritual sex was practiced on the fields, so the man and woman of the farm, of the house, would go out into a field and perform the act in order to bless the field and the soil, in order to fertilize it. Later on, this custom receded into the background and gave way to a ceremonial kind of wedding of a masked male figure with a wooden phallus and a masked woman figure who were acting, pretended to be pregnant, for the same purpose, to assure prosperity and fertility in the next sowing season.
Pri týchto obchôdzkach okrem spevu, modlitieb sa mokoš často vyzývala práve štrnganím kľúčov. Práve preto tento sviatok hada sa traduje, že sa vlastne zem odomykala práve týmito kľúčmi a tým cengotom kľúčov sa budil tento život. A vlastne tento obrad odomykal zem a vodu. Asi toľko.
So on this day, people would go out, into the fields. They would sing, they would say prayers in order to evoke Mokosh and in order to ask her to bless their fields with fertility and prosperity. One way of doing this was also by rattling keys in the fields, because it was said, there's a legend that says that in the spring, goddess Mokosh gives a key to Yarilo, we can see here on the slide, to unlock the earth. So the symbolic act of jiggling the keys was to call her in and call this opening of the earth in and the beginning of the spring and the summer.
Väčšina z nasledujúcich dní je spojená so zemou a vodou. U našich predkresťanských predkov, ale aj v neskoršom období sa medzi Veľkou nocou alebo Veľkdňom a Turicami preto venovala veľká pozornosť studničkám, prameňom, kde súčasťou obradov bolo práve ich čistenie. A pravda, že v obradoch sa nezabúdalo však ani na posvätný oheň. Nešlo len o kladenie batier, ale taktiež o vydymovanie alebo vykiadzanie dymom budovy, obydlia a stajne, ktoré mali symbolizovať ich čistenie. Čiže okrem čistenia vody, studničiek, ohňom sa zase čistili príbytky, či už ľudí alebo zvierat.
In the coming days, it was the element of the earth, of course, and the water that came into the foreground, and that were engaged in rituals and festivities. But there was also fire, so there would be sacred fires being lit, and fire or smoke would be used to cleanse the household, cleanse the dwellings. The coils or the dust that's left over after fire, that would be used to. So the period after the St. George's Day was dedicated to cleansing, cleansing of sort of the outside, the exterior, cleansing of waters and rivers, but also the interior, that's houses, using those two elements, fire and water.
Zapaľovanie ohňov v tomto čase sa tradovalo aj v iných prírodných národoch, náboženstvách, ako sú Kelti či Germáni. Išlo hlavne o Valpurinu noc alebo keltský sviatok Beltane, teda 1. májový deň.
And here we're getting to May, the 1st of May, the May Day. We do find the custom of lighting sacred fires also in other pagan and nature-based faiths. Celts celebrate Beltane on these days, and the Germans know this day as the Valkyria Day.
A vlastne tento 1. májový deň je symbolický, keby sme si zrátali dni medzi Veľkou nocou a slnovratom letným, je vlastne taká polovička. Hej? A presne by to vychádzalo na toho 5. mája, ale ustálilo sa to na ten 1. májový deň. A noc predtým, ako zvyčajne pri všetkých sviatkoch alebo všetkých takých posvätných dňoch, noc pred posvätným dňom zvyčajne bola nocou, pri ktorej mali možnosť prejsť, alebo sa otvárala brána a tou bránou prechádzali práve temné sily, čo vlastne preto pred 1. májom je taktiež taká, sa traduje taká noc, kedy bola nocou čarodeníc, strík, bosorákov. A vlastne, ale tento systém je v zásade platí pre každý sviatok. Že pred oslavou slnečných, jasných bohov je chvíľa určená pre tie temné božstvá.
So the beginning of May marks the halfway point between vernal equinox and the summer solstice. It's on the 5th of May that the celebration tended to sort of happen and then got solidified and tied to May the 1st. So the May the 1st, that became that critical day. And on May the 1st, as well as on other holidays, the night before is believed to be special. It's when the gates between the worlds open, and it is possible for dark forces, dark deities to come through it. So we find it in Easter, we find it at Christmas, that before the celebration of the gods and goddesses of light, there is that moment, there is that night or the period for those dark deities, so they're not overlooked.
Tieto 1. májové dni sa traduje, že bohyňa Živa prichádza na náš svet v zlatom voze, ťahaného pod vodou zlatými rybami, a keď vystupuje z vodnej hladiny, tieto ryby sa menia na holubice, biele holubice, a vlastne ten čas preberá bohyňa Živa od žezlo nad vládou, nad prírodou od vesny, a preto aj holubica je symbolom mieru a vlastne zlatá ryba je zase symbolom zdravia a života. Nie len v slovanskej kultúre, ale dá sa povedať všeho svetovo. Takže tak.
So on May Day, another goddess appears on the scene. It's Shiva. She's the goddess of life. And she rides in on her chariot underneath the water levels. And while it's under the water, the carriage or the chariot is pulled by fish, but once it emerges from the water, the fish turns into the doves, and goddess Shiva continues on her merry way. She takes on rule from goddess Vesna, excuse me, on this day. With Vesna being a goddess of spring, Shiva now comes in, and she is kind of a more, she's the goddess of a more that mature spring and summer. So she's the goddess of life, whereas Vesna is more the goddess of the beginning of the early spring. The symbols of the doves and of the fish we find, or the golden fish, we find it not just in Slavic mythology, but elsewhere. The dove symbolizes peace, while the golden fish symbolized life and abundance.
Podľa legend Slovanov v tento deň vlastne dochádza k svadbe medzi bohom slnka Dažbogom a bohyňou živou, bohyňou života a bohyňou znovu obnovenia rovnováhy a životom ako takým. Tam je taká zaujímavá legenda, kde vlastne práve Dažbog poráža jedného z bohov temnôt tým, že rozbije vajce, v ktorom je schovaný jeho život, ale tým dochádza k narušeniu rovnováhy a celý náš svet v zásade zhorí. A práve bohyňa Živa po tejto katastrofe vlastne obnovuje s bohom slnka Dažbogom po svojej svadbe, čiže po tomto období obnovuje náš svet.
So May Day is also a day of the wedding of Shiva, the goddess of life, and Dashbog, the god of sun. Before they get married, this is a dark time for the world because Dashbog defeats one of the dark gods, but by doing so, he disrupts the balance between light and the dark, between the good and the bad in the world, and our world burns down. But then Shiva comes in, the goddess of life and renewal. They get married, and as they get married in this symbolic union, the world renews itself once again.
Preto pri v tomto čase preto v Svetoháji sa zvyčajne zapaľovali dve vatry. Jedna vatra je dva ohne. Jeden oheň bol zasvetený bohu Dažbogu a mužom. Na druhej strane druhá vatra, druhý oheň symbolizoval bohyňu Živu a ženstvo. Prechodom medzi týmito dvoma vatrami vlastne dochádzalo k posveteniu všetkého, čo prechádzalo okolo, skrz. Čiže práve medzi týmito dvoma ohňami sa zvyčajne v Svetoháji stretali mládenci a devy a strácali sa potom široko ďaleko v okolí Svetohája, čím naplňovali práve tú samotnú podstatu života.
On May Day, two fires would be lit in a sacred groves, one for women, the Shiva's fire, and one for men, the Dashbog's fire for men. Whatever passed in between the fires was said to be blessed. And it's also here in between the two fires that the young men and women met, after which they disappeared into the darkness of the night to perform that purpose of life, the renewal, the kind of enact that wedding marriage ceremony and the renewal act here on earth.
Pravda, že v rámci tohto sviatku sa verilo aj v posilnenú čarovnú moc byli, a tak tieto rastliny pri východe slnka sa zbierali a prenášali sa práve potom večer medzi týmito dvoma vatrami, skôr ako sa, a všetky obetiny, ktoré sa položili na oltár, sa tiež vlastne preniesli najprv medzi týmito dvoma ohňami. Prechod medzi týmito dvoma, okrem týchto mládencov a diev, prechádzali nimi aj ľudia, ktorí sa chceli ozdraviť. Malo to jednoducho posilňujúci účinok.
Sort of entering that space between the two fires was said to be sort of very invigorating and healing. So also people who were in need of a healing would go there, would walk that line. It was also said that herbs had special potency at this time of year, so they would be picked and they would be carried again on that pathway between the two fires and laid on the shrine, as well as everything else that appeared on the altars and in the shrines.
Tento čas bolo vlastne takým zvykom ozdobovať aj posvätné stromy zavesením rôznych stúšiek, pentličiek. A vlastne tu začína taký, tu by sme mohli hľadať koreň toho, kedy vzniká tradícia stavania májov. Môžeme?
At this time, trees were also decorated with ribbons and little things. And this is the beginning of the custom that's still alive in Slovakia and elsewhere in Slavic Europe today. And that's the tradition of building maypoles on May the 1st.
Tento obrad bol známy už v staroveku a ako dochoval sa aj v staroveku. Napriek všetkým vplyvom sa dochoval vlastne až do dnešných dní a tieto stromy, pôvodné máje, ozdobené stromčeky tými stužkami sa dávali pred letným slnovratom pred domy ako ochrana pred temnými mocnosťami, zlými duchmi, chorobami. Vlastne taký symbolický strom života. Postavanie mája časom nadobudlo aj význam prejavovania úcty a žičlivosti a odtiaľ už nebolo veľmi ďaleko k tomu, aby tento obrad sa transformoval do myšlienky postaviť máj pred dom svojej obdivovanej devy. A vlastne na Slovensku vlastne sa nakoniec pretavil do toho, že dievčatám sa stávali máje pred domy.
So this custom, as it has evolved through the millennia, sort of changed slightly. So in the ancient times, people would build maypoles and would place them in front of their dwellings to be protected from the negative spirits and from all misfortune. Then later on, the maypole started to become associated with respect. And from there, it was just a short step to building maypoles as a sign of respect and love for girls. So later on, we see boys building and placing these maypoles in near or in front of the houses of the girls that they were interested in as a token of love and respect.
Ak sa však bližšie pozrieme na tento máj, tak vlastne ten stýčený strom je symbolom mužstva a ohnivej sily, podobne ako je to v Svetoháji tá jedna z batier. Na druhej strane, nechcem byť vulgárny, tak ukážem tento prst. A vlastne toto je máj a na ten strom sa dával venček, ktorý bol symbolom ženstva. Čiže ten význam je jasný. A to bola vlastne tá druhá vatra Svetohája.
So upon closer inspection, we do find maypoles laden with that Slavic symbolism and mythology, because the maypole, I'll replicate Weleslaw here. So here we have the pole that represents Dashbok, so the male principle, and on top of the we don't see it in the picture here, but there is kind of a wreath on top of it, and that's the symbol of Jiva, or the feminine principle. So put them together, we get that union that we mentioned when we talked about Dashbook and Jiva and the principle of life.
I just want to just jump in right there and just say something very quickly. That's also a very common symbol that you find in Indian spirituality, mythology, which is the Shakti and Shiva union. It's the same thing. You have the lingam and the Shakti vulva on top of it, which symbolizes the creation of life force.
Je to taký univerzálny symbol v zásade celého sveta, takže nie je divu, že sa to nachádza aj niekde inde.
So we're all connected and we're all one. So it's no wonder that we do find this universal symbolism scattered across cultures across the world.
No a v nasledujúcom období sa vykonávali obrady viažúce sa práve k vode a k zemi, lebo naši predkovia, a najmä k vode, lebo naši predkovia si silne uvedomovali tú spätosť života s vodou. Bohyňa Živa je práve taká vodná bohyňa, dá sa povedať. Si uvedomovali to, že bez vody nie je života.
After May Day festivities, people dedicated time and energy to revering water deities and water spirits because they realized that without water there is no life. So they certainly did not underestimate or underappreciate this element that also goddess Jiva represents. She's the watery goddess.
Úcte však nebola len voda ako taká samotná, napriek tomu, že bola posvätná, ale taktiež bytosti s ňou spojené. Všetkými tými bytostiami od vodníkov cez víly, rusalky až po duchov prameňov a studničiek vládli podľa našich tradícií božstva, ako je Vodan a Diva. A aby si ľudia naklonili aj tieto bytosti, prinášali na brehy vodných tokov rôzne obety ako koláče, chlieb, maslo, syr a tak ďalej, kvety. Pri stromoch a riekach sa tiež zdobili vlastne tie stromy stužkami. Tak, poďme.
So the respect for water translated into respect for water deities. All the spirits of rivers and of wells. This includes water fairies that you might know as the rusalkas, various well spirits, green men called vodnik in the Slavic tradition. These were governed by these two deities that we see in the picture. That's Vodan and Diva. And to sort of show respect for them and reverence, people would bring offerings to wells, to springs, to rivers, flowers, food, and so on. They would also decorate trees with ribbons in those special places. And we already mentioned that they would dedicate time to cleaning wells, springs, rivers, and streams.
Napríklad mám tu svoj prívesok. Častým rituálom a takým čarovaním, môžete si to skúsiť, je, keby som chcel tento prívesok obetovať, alebo mohla by to byť šatka, stužka, zobral by som takýto prívesok, spravil na ňom uzlík a predtým, ako by som ho zatiahol, vyriekol by som do neho svoje želanie. To želanie by som do tohto uzlíka uzavrel a takto zavesil na konár stromu. Duchovia vôd majú radi všelijaké ozdoby a tak, keď by prišli a odviazali by túto moju obetinu, našli by v nej aj práve moje želanie a bolo by ich, povedzme, povinnosťou mi napomôcť vyplniť toto želanie. Čiže to je taký magický rituál tohto obdobia.
So one simple ritual that was done, and then you can perhaps try for yourself, was as Weleslaw was showing. I can take a scarf or a pendant or something glittery, because water spirits and deities are said to like things that shimmer in light. And you would tie it together, but before you tie the knot, you create this little loop and you speak your wish into that loop. Then you tie it and you hang it on a tree or place it nearby some water. And when this is found by the water spirits, they would untie the knot, find the wish there, and then they would be obligated to help you make it come true.
Pravda, že okrem tejto obetiny, ako už bolo povedané, bolo takou tradíciou a bežnou vecou a bežným obradom tohto obdobia čistiť rieky, potoky, studničky.
And we already mentioned that there would
do
be...
obdobia Túric mali byť všetky vodné zdroje vyčistené.
So we already said that there would be cleansing of waters taking place that people would actively participate in, so that everything, all the streams, all the springs would be clear by Turice or Pentecost that happens 50 days after Easter.
Celé toto obdobie, ťažko povedať presne, kedy bolo, lebo v zásade, keďže to je taký vodné obrady, tie sú spojené s mesiacom a preto často ich čas sa určoval na základe mesačných cyklov a aj tento končiaci alebo začínajúci sviatok Túric bol tiež určovaný na základe mesačných fáz. Tohto roku Túrice prichádzajú, myslím, na 5. júna, čiže máme chvíľočku na to sa pripraviť a ešte dokončiť všetky veci alebo pripraviť si práve tieto rituály a toho na Túrice vlastne začína práve, môžeme hovoriť, že sa začína leto.
So we still have time to enact these rituals and to get done everything that needs to be done in time for Pentecost that falls on the beginning of June this year. And it marks the beginning of the summer season. And this one, as well as other festivals, it's hard. It's not a set date. It doesn't have a fixed date in the calendar, because the date or the time when these festivities and important days would take place on was determined by the lunar calendar. That's the case of Easter. And because Letnice or Pentecost comes 50 days after Easter, then by extension, this holiday is also determined by the lunar phases still today.
5. jún.
5th of June. So get ready.
Dobre. Tento hlavným turičným obradom bola voľba kráľa a kráľovnej. Najmä na Morave sú krásne, doteraz sa zachovali krásne sprievody a voľby kráľa a kráľovny, kde jazdia na koňoch, úžasné niečo. Tento obrad je vyvrcholením a vyslovene svadobným dňom, ako sme vraveli, znovu sa to trošku opakuje, ale znovu je to svadba bohyne Živy a Dažboga. Vlastne z občiny bol zvyčajne vybraný najzdatnejší mladík či junák a z široko ďalekého okolia najkrajšia deva. A títo dvaja symbolizovali potom v tých sprievodoch turičných osoby bohyne Živy a boha Dažboga, kde potom kde ich korunoval bytosť alebo človek, postava v maske Tura, ktorý zosobňoval boha Welesa. A vlastne tento boh Weles bol symbolom plodnosti a tak ďalej a tak ďalej. A preto sa to aj volá vlastne, keďže ten Weles má svoju postavu často ako rohaté božstvo, ako Tur, tak aj preto je tam tá spojitosť, že sa to volá Turice.
So this festival carries different names. It's known as Turice, but also Letnice elsewhere in Rusadle. And the most common, sort of the iconic customs that still takes place on this day, for example, in Moravia, in the Czech Republic, is the crowning or the wedding of the king and the queen of the holiday. Back in the day, the strongest boy or young man would be selected along with the most beautiful girl, and sort of they would be elected the Turice queen and the king. And we find here the repeat of the wedding of Živa and Dashbog that we already mentioned. So that kind of theme continues into the summer as it begins. And on Turice or Letnice, this king and the queen are ceremonially married by a figure, by person dressed as an ox, representing god Veles, the deity of fertility. Hence the name in Slovakia of the holiday, Turice, from the word tur, meaning an ox, and symbol of Veles.
Na čele takého potom vlastne, keď boli tí dvaja zosobášení, ten sprievod prechádzal po obciach, alebo vlastne po nejakom kraji a vlastne tým posvedcoval znovu celé to okolie. Na čele toho sprievodu pred Živou a Dashbogom kráčal buď už spomínaná postava Welesa, Tura, často na čele bola aj nesená figurína rodového predka, lebo aj v tomto období ľudia nezabudali na svojich predkov a svoju rodinu, ktorí vlastne počas týchto obradov boli tiež žiadaní o pomoc pri nasledujúcom agrárnom období. Často sa vtedy tiež navštevovali hroby predkov, kde z tých slávnostných obetín často na ich hroby boli prinášané tieto obetiny a vlastne prosení predkovia o pomoc v nasledujúcom agrárnom období.
So after the wedding, there is a procession that passes through the area or town, again bringing blessings to where it crosses, where it passes. It is led by the mask of an ox, or the symbol of Veles. After that comes the king and the queen, representing Živa and Dashbog and everybody else. Often we would find at the beginning of the procession a statue of an ancestor, because Turice, as well as many other holidays, were also partly dedicated to ancestors, and the graves where visited offerings were brought in order for, as people asked the ancestors for their help and guidance in this season too.
A často hroby týchto predkov boli aj ozdobované kvetmi, zelenými halúskami a tak ďalej. Čiže tiež boli také výzdoba hrobov, ale oproti dušičkám, kedy sa vlastne zapaľujú ohne a tie cintoríny sa rozžiaria hlavne sviečkami, tak v tomto období to bolo také ozdobenie mohyl a hrobov predkov kvetmi a niečím zeleným, niečím takým oslavným.
And the graves at this time of year were decorated with greenery, which is the symbol of the season and of the holiday. as well as flowers, again in that respect paying to those that came before us. Dobre, posunieme sa na slnovrat. Môžeme?
No, už sme tam.
Super. Okay, so we'll continue with summer solstice.
A vlastne, ešte musím dokončiť, tento sviatok, Turic, bol veľmi takým veselým sviatkom, kde ľudia chodili v maskách, tancovalo sa, spievalo, ale musíme povedať, že to bolo posledné také tešenie sa, lebo potom nastalo obdobie letných prác, kedy už veľmi na obrady a oslavy bolo málo času.
So this was also before we actually go to solstice. Turice or Letnice was a very joyful holiday. People gathered to dance, to sing. This was the last opportunity for them to do so, really, because after this comes the time of summer. After that comes harvest, so they would be very busy in the fields and they would not have time to party, essentially. So this was a time for them to celebrate life in fullness.
No a potom sa začalo leto a práca, kozba, práca na poli, pasenie dobytka. No a kým nastal ten letný slnovrat, o ktorom budeme za chvíľočku hovoriť, zvykla sa ešte vyzývať taká bohyňa Pizmar, ktorá bola takou bohyňou umenia a takým symbolom začiatku leta, radosti, lebo napriek tej práci, ťažkej práci, ten život na poli vlastne ľudí tiež naplňal istou radosťou, ale zároveň sa prebudzala v ľuďoch žiadosť, láska, túžba a práve počas večerov strávených pri ohníku po celodennej namáhavej práci na lúkach sa vďaka tejto bohyni Pizmar tiež veštilo, čarovalo a vykonávali sa rôzne čarovné obrady, ktoré mali privolať lásku a plodnosť. Tak.
After Turice or after Pentecost comes that summer season that's filled with work in the fields. At this time, we find the goddess Pizmar celebrated, so she's the goddess of art, but she was also one that was evoked during those summer evenings where we are filled with passion and the yearning for love. So she would be prayed to, she would be evoked to bring love, but also fertility into one's life. And she's a symbol of joy, because though these days were filled with hard work and a lot of it, this was a very joyful work that sort of filled people up with a sense of purpose and happiness.
Celé toto letné obdobie je zasvetené okrem živý v nekonečnej aj Pizmar napríklad, tak aj bohyne Lade, jednej z bohyne Lade, tej najväčšej bohyni slovanskej. Celé to obdobie roka je zasvetené práve tejto bohyni, ale nie len jej. A u všetkých letných sviatkov a všetkých obradov môžeme sa aj v historických záznamoch stretnúť s popisom pohlavnej promiskuity aj počas letného slnovratu. A to v zásade sa to spomína v tých historických spisoch hlavne počas letného slnovratu. V skutočnosti tam neviazanosť a uvoľnenosť mravov bola spojená s ročným obdobím, s letom, s radosťou, so slobodou a hoci ťažkou prácou, ale na druhej strane takým užívaním, tým životom človeka v tej dobe. Lebo v zime človek bol stiesnený niekde, kde ho životné podmienky nepustili, a keď prišlo to leto, jar, leto a potom neskôr aj jeseň, tak, ale hlavne to leto bolo také plné života jednoducho.
So the season of summer is dedicated to a number of gods and goddesses. So we already mentioned Pismar, but there is also goddess Lada, the goddess of love, that plays an important role at this time of year. And we do find mentions in chronicles and historic records of certain loosening of morals and promiscuity at this time of year, escalating with the summer solstice. But it was really underpinned by the nature of the season, by that feeling of freedom, happiness, and joy that were in stark contrast to how people felt in winter. So that was also a manifestation simply of that season and of the way of life of our predecessors, which was very much linked to the soil and to the earth. So we are very happy when spring and summer arrives after winter. So you can imagine how important and wonderful it was for them, the people who depended on that warmth.
A práve tento súd medzi ohňom a vodou bol našimi predkami vnímaný ako sila umožňujúca samotný život. To všetko bolo spojené úzko s dozrievaním úrody, rastom dobytka, kedy vám z jahňatka za chvíľu vyrastie ovečka a vlastne vidíte, ako vám to všetko rastie pod rukami. A vlastne práve potom vrcholí leto a vtedy si ľudia predsa len našli čas a tu sa dostávame k jednému z najvýznamnejších slovanských sviatkov a doteraz aj najhonosnejších, lebo bolo všetkého dostatku vlastne v ten čas. A to je práve sviatok letného slnovratu.
So this season, you can see sort of things and animals growing literally in front of your very eyes. And the period, the season escalates with summer solstice, which was and still is one of the most lavish and abundant holidays because there is an abundance of everything at this time of year. And we will see the continual theme of the two elements, the fire and the water.
Tento sviatok bol vlastne najdlhším dňom, keď bolo najviac slnečného svitu a nazýval sa dňom Kupala. To je ďalšia transformácia boha Dažboga, boha slnka, kedy sme si v minulosti hovorili o Koliadovi, maličkom bábätku symbolizujúci zimný slnovrat, o Jarilovi, symbolizujúci ten začiatok jar a začiatok toho agrárneho času. A momentálne sa dostávame vlastne ku Kupalovi, ktorý symbolizuje ten vrchol leta. A možno na budúce si budeme hovoriť aj o štvrtej tvári. Čiže ten Dažbog má 4 tváre a symbolizuje, pozerá sa na všetky svetové strany. A práve Kupalo je božstvo stelesňujúce letné slnko.
And
ťažko sa to preloží.
Summer solstice marks the longest day of the year. So hence the importance of the sun and of the sun cult and of a god Dažbog, who transforms itself throughout the year as the sun. So winter solstice marks the baby version of the god when the sun is still weak, the baby sun. We mentioned the Yarilo as the beginning of spring, so the baby grows into youth now. And summer solstice brings on the third version of that sun deity that comes through at the apex of the summer. And at this time of year, he's known as Kupala.
A vlastne aj preto, že Dažbog má 4 tváre, v rámci obradov sa stavali 4, vlastne 5 vatier na kopci, ktorá vlastne každá vatra z tých 4 symbolizovala jednu tvár boha Dažboga a v prostriedku horela ústretová vatra a vlastne práve počas tohto sviatku to bol taký ohnivý sviatok, kde sa na rôzne tyče sa dávali železné tyče, sa uplietli vence, ktoré sa tiež zapálili a roztočili sa, rôzne svargy a rôzne také ohnivé rituály, točenie reťazami, na ktorých vlastne horeli fakle a taká ohňová show to bola dosť.
So this was a festival of fire, where fire was the most important element. And speaking of God Dashbog, so we mentioned the 3 faces of his. Today he has a 4th one that we will cover on one of our future events. But because of these 4 embodiments of Svarog, 4 sacred fires are laid on the summer solstice nights up in hills. So there's 4 in each direction. Symbolizing the 4 faces of Svarog, and then there is the 5th central fire in the middle. There are a number of other fire rituals that take place on the night, such as burning special wreaths that are made for the day, and so on and so forth. So it really is a very fiery event, dominated by the element of fire.
Áno, ale do nasledujúceho rána, ale to si povieme za chvíľočku, ale ten oheň, a prečo bol ten sviatok taký významný, je preto, lebo samotní Slovania sa nazývali Dashbogovými vnúkmi. A vlastne Slovania boli často vnímaní ako úctievači slnka a práve kvôli tomuto sviatku, kedy vlastne bolo uctievané alebo prejavovaná úcta práve Bohu slnka a slnku samotnému, ktoré nám dáva život v zásade.
So the Slavs called themselves the grandsons of Dashbog, so they worshipped the sun cult. They were the people of the sun that was central, essential, and key to their way of life, the survival. Also, and that manifests in the sort of opulence of this celebration and of the rituals that take place on the longest day of the year.
Vlastne tento sviatok, ako hovorím, bol určený slnku, čo by sprostredkovaniu života. Ale na druhé ráno sa často chodilo kúpať do jazier a vôd, čím zase bola tá slovanská rovnovážnosť zabezpečená, že po ohnivých rituáloch sa nad ránom alebo pri východe slnka skákalo do vôd jazier a riek umývaním v potokoch a znovu vlastne tam bola nastolená tá rovnováha. Vajanské zvyky a obrady a rituály boli veľmi rôznorodé. Vajanské je iné pomenovanie pre sviatok Kupala. Tak, preložme to.
So while the night was dominated by the fire, symbolizing the sun, then the early morning or the morning after would be dedicated to water, where people would go and bathe in rivers and in lakes to cleanse, to renew themselves. And in that, the balance that the Slavs strove for was assured.
Vlastne ešte v rámci tých ohnivých rituálov, častým rituálom bol chôdza po pahrebe, žeravej pahrebe, točenie, ako som vravel, žonglovanie s ohňom, ale jedným ústretovým rituálom bolo skákanie cez vatru, cez oheň, a kde tento rituál bol ešte povýšený na to, že ak dvaja zaľúbení, k tomu sa viazala istá slovanská legenda, ale dvaja zaľúbení sa držiac za ruky preskočili spolu cez vatru a nepustili sa, považovali sa za zasnúbených.
So as part of the fire rituals that we mentioned, people practiced walking on hot coals, juggling fire, but also jumping over those sacred bonfires. That if that was done by a man and a woman, so they jumped together over the fire.
Nie, stop.
Nie?
Nie. Skákalo sa osobitne, každý za seba, lebo to bol rituál, ktorý mal ozdraviť a očistiť samotného seba. Ale okrem toho existoval ešte rituál, kedy sa skákalo spolu.
So there was either individuals jumped over the fire, but there was also a ritual when a man and a woman would do it together, holding hands, jumping over the fire. And if they managed to do that without letting go of each other's hands, they were considered engaged.
A vlastne toto preskakovanie tých jednotlivcov malo liečivú funkciu, očistnú, ale celkovo a potom tie kúpania, znovu okúpanie sa tiež malo, pravda, že očistnú funkciu, tiež malo priniesť zdravie, ale taktiež malo priniesť dostatok vláhy, lebo hej, to leto vrcholilo, bolo horúco, teplo, nepršalo a práve v tom čase ešte tie rastliny a všetko potrebovalo trošku vláhy, aby to ešte pred tým zberom, niekedy v jeseni, ešte nabralo tú silu a všetko pekne dozrelo.
So the fire, or jumping over the fire, was to bless one with health. It was also a cleansing process, as was bathing in water, bathing in rivers and in the lakes. In addition to cleansing, this water element was to also call in rain, because summer is at its peak at this time of year. There is little rain, yet that rain is essential for the crops to continue growing and maturing. So an important part of these festivities was that calling in the fire and humidity.
No a vlastne tento sviatok bol honosný, či už tým, že trošku skôr sa začínal voľbou kráľa a kráľovny a vlastne vrcholí to tými veľkými ohňami, s neviazanosťou, zábavou. Možno napriek tomu, alebo práve vďaka tomu, aj s príchodom kresťanstva sa tieto zvyky v podstate zachovali, hoci sa ako obyčajne sa ich termín trošičku posunul. V dnešnej dobe sa zachovalo toto obdobie voláme to jánske ohne, alebo trošku neskôr petrášske ohne, ale vlastne celý tento symbolizmus a celé toto čaro sa vlastne zachovalo do dnešných dní.
So this was one of the biggest sort of celebrations that was about fun and joy and life itself. And it was preserved also after Christianity arrived in the region, although it was a bit amended and moved to a different date. So instead of summer solstice on June 21st here in Slovakia, we have St. John's fires on, I believe it's June the 24th, or then again later on. But the essence of the holiday that was so important to our Slavic predecessors was retained and maintained.
No a po týchto slnovratných obradoch znovu nasledovala ťažká práca a vlastne ešte tam bolo a vlastne leto sa zlomilo a prechádzalo do novej fázy, kedy doteraz bolo žiadané o to, aby niečo sa otvorilo, niečo začalo rásť a niečo sme nadobudli a slnko nadobudalo silu. Po tomto sviatku už prosíme bohov o to, aby zachovalo to, čo vyrástlo, aby všetko dozrelo, aby sme zožali a mali z toho vlastne prospech. A v tomto nasledujúcom období potom sú tam sa tam vzývali rôzne horské božstvá, podzemné božstvá, ako Kovlad a Rúna, alebo božstva, ktoré majú také poľnohospodárstvo tiež na starosti ako Polevik a Kurent, ktorí mali na starosti polia, lúky a sady. A vlastne ich sa už žiadalo a prosilo, aby nám dali všetky tie dary, ktoré doteraz sme o nich žiadali a starali sa. A teraz ich prosíme, že dajte nám ich, aby sa zachovali, aby sme sa mohli pripraviť na zimu. Ale o tom pravdepodobne možno viac na budúce.
Fajne. So summer solstice is a break from all this summer work in the fields, so that people took a day out to celebrate, to be merry, but it also represents a break in the summer. So from this point onwards, the days are getting shorter, and instead of asking the gods and the deities for the abundance, for things to grow, for the new, essentially, from this day onwards, people asked for what has already grown to be preserved and to mature and to grow into good harvest that would then see them through autumn. But hopefully this will be something that we will look into in the future at the customs of late spring and autumn. And at this point, I would like to thank Weleslaw. Thank you. Ďakujeme za ďalšiu úžasnú prezentáciu.
You're welcome.
It's very informative and enlightening. And now I would like to, Zuzi, open it up for questions and answers.
Exactly. So I think because we've already gone quite a bit over, we're about an hour and a half into the presentation, we want to leave it open for some Q&A. We're going to give 10 minutes for this. So please don't be shy, just jump on video and ask your question. This is a great opportunity to just clarify any points that you may have missed. I saw some comments already in the chat, so this is your opportunity.
So once again, here's our Weleslav's books, and here is the special course offer for you that's tied to this webinar, so it's time limited. So just you remember, and yes, let's get the questions going. Or are there any in the chat?
There were, unfortunately, my screen shut down, so I've actually lost the chat. But if you guys want to jump on and ask a question, please do. There was a great comment I actually really enjoyed. I enjoyed the parallel by Amy about mowing the first lawn of spring, as well as the parallel from another female in the chat about the prom king and prom queen kind of ritual that takes place in the US in high schools, of the strongest male paired with the most beautiful female, collectively voted. So we can see how some of these ancient rites are continued in present day, but often they're disconnected from their primordial meaning.
There you go. So yes, so if there are any questions, please ask them now. If there are none, oh, I can see the question.
Okay. Yeah, so here's one. Do you see an increasing revival in any of these heritage types of Slavic traditions in Slovakia today?
Vidíme nejaký zvýšený záujem o obnovu týchto konkrétnych sviatkov a rituálov v tomto regióne?
V zásade zvýšenú, no tak ja na tom pracujem už 20 rokov, takže vlastne áno.
Suzy?
So Weleslaw says that he's been working on this, on bringing awareness to the masses for the last 20 years. But I would just like to add that I as a young person or a relatively young person in Slovakia, there's definitely an increasing interest in more folk traditions, as well as some of the ancient traditions. Although the Slav mythology is still a little bit of a sensitive topic, especially the Slavic symbols of the gods. For mainstream society, they're still a little bit uncomfortable with that because they associate it with, let's say, Nazi symbolism, which in a way, the Nazis also hijacked a lot of this ancient symbolism to empower themselves and corrupted it. Unfortunately, it has a bad name. But yeah, definitely there's more and more increasing interest in origins, and that's starting firstly in the folklore, and it will no doubt spill over more into the Slavic Slavic spirituality of our ancestors.
So there is another question we will quickly repeat and sum up with Weleslaw. What does the ox represent? Takže Weleslaw, tak v krátkosti to zhrnieme, čo znamená ten tur, symbol tura.
Vlastne v minulosti sme už hovorili o bohovi Velesovi, jednému z hlavnej trojice božstiev slovanských, kde je vlastne Perún, Svarok a práve Veles. Veles má na starosti okrem... Veles je veľmi také božstvo dosť tajomné a má toho veľa na starosti, lebo od samotného jeho začiatku, kedy bol bohom vôd, sa prepracoval cez rôzne storky až na božstvo, povedzme, mágie a čarov, ale hlavnou jeho úloh v slovanskej mytológii je plodnosť a starostlivosť o poľnohospodárstvo ako také, či už o zvieratá alebo rastliny. A práve ako božstvo plodnosti, preto práve je zobrazovaný, vlastne k tomu smeruje táto otázka, je zobrazovaný ako rohaté božstvo, ako Túr. A to preto, lebo podľa legendy sa zrodil z vesmírnej krávy. Takže a jemu ostali tie rohy.
So the ox represents Veles, who is kind of a mysterious deity who evolves and transforms through as Slavic mythology and its stories unfold. And eventually he ends up as a deity that's connected to kind of magic and the rituals and all these kind of practices, but he is also a god of fertility, which is why he appears in the summer, early summer and late spring rituals in that role. And he's also the god of agriculture. So both plants and animals, he's their guardian, their protector. He appears as the deity, or he's depicted as a deity with horns, hence the mask of an ox or like a horned animal, because it's said in the legends that he was born from a cosmic cow and retained those horns for his lifetime. He's one of the foundational deities on the foundational gods of the Slavic Parthenon, together with the others that we mentioned today. If you would like to know more about him and other gods in more depth, there is the course for you that contains the other webinars that we ran with Weleslaw. We looked in more detail into that deity that you asked about, Veles. So that's there for you. Potom tam bola ešte jedna otázka, čo znamená tá zlatá rybka.
Just one sec, I just want to bring everyone's attention to the chat. So I put the link actually for that 2-for-1 course special. And I really recommend, if you are not familiar with the Slavic gods and you want to have a better overview of who they are and what roles they play, like Veles and Perun, we really recommend you taking a peek into this course. And when you do purchase it, please remember that you're also supporting our NGO and making webinars like this with Weleslaw for us able to continue to do them for free.
Dnes som sa pripojil z manželkyného počítača a tak nevidím ani to, čo sa píše, čiže neviem si to čítať, pozerať si to. Takže tak, no.
No, takže ešte tá zlatá rybka, že alebo tie zlaté rybky, čoho symbolom boli tie?
Vlastne je to symbol zdravia všeobecne. Zlatá rybka zdravia, šťastia. Vlastne aj v rozprávke sa objavuje ako zlatá rybka, ktorá vám plní 3 želania a preto si treba uvážlivo vlastne želať tie 3 želania. Ale v zásade zlatá rybka všeobecne je takým symbolom zdravia.
So the golden fish symbolizes health, but also good luck. So we do find it in other stories and legends as the animal that affords you your wish, and you have to think carefully because you make that wish. But yes, overall it's health and luck.
And one more question here, actually part of that. I didn't understand this, is if someone could clarify, it's what was the name of the speakers community group? Are you referring to the Sacred Grove community that Weleslaw founded? Adeladha, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Okay, wait, we have a comment.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's called the Sacred Grove of the Slavic faith, and in Slovak, if you're interested in that, je to Svetohaj. Kto má teraz mi to vypadlo?
Svetovej rodnej viery.
Svetohaj rodnej viery.
Ale takých občín je na Slovensku vlastne vyrastlo mnoho a dá sa to nájsť rôzne po Slovensku. Je niekoľko. O tom sme sa už skôr bavili. Ešte k tej zlatej rybke. Vlastne na Slovensku doteraz sa hovorí byť zdravý ako rybka. Hej?
So yeah, that was the answer to community. There is a number of them in Slovakia and in other Slavic countries. As the interest increases in that pre-Christian legacy, that gives and has given rise to these communities. One more comment on the fish symbolism. In Slovakia, until today, it's said to be healthy as a fish. So it's again a proof, further proof to what that symbolism of the fish entails. And here is one more question, Michael.
Yeah, a question about Turica, Pentecost. What's the origins of the other names, Letnica and Rusadlo? Because in the East, you always hear Rusad, you don't hear Turica. That's standard Slovak, Western more.
Čo znamenajú tie ďalšie názvy Turic?
V zásade to je len pomenovanie a Slovania boli a sú vlastne veľkou másou, vždycky sa medzi sebou kúsali, ale v zásade preto často nemali rovnaké vyjadrovania a často nechceli prijímať vyjadrovania tých druhých a tak si transformovali názvy, ako každý si trošku tak chcel. A v zásade ten sviatok je rovnaký, princíp všade ten istý, len západní Slovania si ho volali Letnice, viacej na východe ho volali Rusadla alebo Rusalia a niekde v strede sa volali Turice. A ja sa držím toho turičného, ako som už viackrát povedal, tá zlatá stredná cesta.
A viete, prečo odkiaľ pochádza ten názov Rusadla, že čo to má evokovať? Lebo Letnice sú jasné.
Je to jazykový, myslím, že môžem popátrať, prešlo mi to cez, ale kecal by som, ale mohol by som zavádzať, čo ja nerad. Musím si to pozrieť a overiť, že čo to presne je, ale vychádza to z jazyka a je to niečo s ozdravovaním alebo so zdravím, alebo niečo tak sa mi, ale nepamätám si to presne, čiže pozriem si to a dám vedieť, keď.
Okay, ďakujem. So the Slavs, they were, not a homogeneous mass. They had internal disagreements with each other, and until today, yes, it's a very important reminder that's happening these days. Anyway, so they like to come up with their own names for these festivities and not to adopt somebody else's. Whereas the rituals remain more or less the same, the names could be diverse. So in the West or in the Western Slavic world, we would find that name Letnice, that's a link to leto or summer. In Slovakia, in the middle, it's Turice that we already talked about. And further east, we find Rusalia or Rusadla. Weleslaw said he will look up the meaning because he doesn't want to say for sure, but it's as far as he remembers now, and he will confirm it. This is to do with language. something from the language, and it's about something to do with or connected to health.
Health. A trošku som si spomenul, je tam taký koreň slova rúšať, pohybovať sa, napredovať. Čiže je to práve ten význam turíc, ten význam letníc, že vlastne niečo, to, čo som vlastne vravel, že tie sviatky sú predzvesťou toho napredovania, toho až do letného slnovratu, to slnko rastie na moci, čiže napreduje, rúša, ide dopredu, prináša zdravie, silu. A to je význam toho slova rusadľa, vlastne hýbať sa dopredu.
So actually we do have the update on that. So it comes from the Slavic root that of word that refers to the movement forward, to progress, and this is what this Pentecost Turica is about. So we are moving towards that summer solstice. The sun is growing on strength, and it's moving forward. So hence that's the essence of the holiday itself, and that was kind of carried over into the names. Thank you for that question, Michael.
Ešte dovysvetľujem, aby to bolo úplne jasné. Keď si predstavíme ten kruh a keď si predstavíme ten prvý sviatok, kedy sa slnko zrodí, a keď sme hovorili o tom, že Turice sú kvázi v prostriedku medzi až zimnou rovnodennosťou, teda zimným slnovratom a letným slnovratom v polovičke je rovnodennosť. A medzi rovnodennosťou a vlastne letným slnovratom je vlastne stále ten ako keby nárast. Hej? Že ten rok rastie od začiatku zrodenia slnka cez Vianoce, stále to rastie. To božstvo je zobrazované, Dážbok je zobrazované ako malé bábätko v perinke. V rámci jarných sviatkov je zobrazované božstvo slnka ako statný junák, ako Jarilo, a ako Kúpalo už je dospelý chlap, čiže je tam ten nárast. Ale práve po Kúpale prichádza ten zlom, kedy to začína klesať, kedy človek a celý vesmír a celý kruh začína klesať. Začína nie naberať na sile, ale ubúdať zo sily, stárnuť a prichádzať k zrelosti, až nakoniec prichádzať k zime, k smrti. A preto tam je to rusala, ten pohyb.
So this is this movement and evolution that Weleslaw captured as also embodies just in the procession of the sun, in the movement of the sun from winter solstice to summer solstice. So the half point between the winter and the summer solstice is the vernal equinox. In winter solstice, baby sun is the baby version of Dážbok, that's spring time. He is a young man, Jarilo, and his strength, sort of the strength of the sun, is growing as we move from that vernal equinox through to it into summer solstice, when Dážbok is that strong man, sort of at the peak of his life and its performance. And in this time of year, we see the day is getting longer and longer and longer. On summer solstice, that breaks, and Dážbok matures. He doesn't lose power, but he transforms. The days are beginning to grow shorter, and so we move from that sort of autumn phase of year and autumn phase of life into winter, which is the death and the end, and then it's renewed again. But from that winter solstice through Turice to summer, we are still in that growing phase, strengthening. So, and that's that movement forward.
Veľmi dobrá otázka ináč. Super.
So actually, we're going to end it on that note. I think we'll leave further questions for the next time we host a webinar with Weleslaw, which will be soon. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone that is still on this call. We have 53 people, almost 2 hours into the call. So we're very grateful for your attention and for your passion about this topic. And of course, thank you, Weleslaw, for your personal passion and interest and the generosity of your time to share this knowledge with us. We said it earlier at the beginning of this webinar, and I'm going to repeat it today. We really look forward to the opportunity to creating a book with you where we can take a lot of this information that you've built up over the decades and really introduce it to the English-speaking world. So we're very grateful to work with you and to build this cooperation and also to share you with our community at Global Slovakia. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Weleslaw, and we wish you a wonderful Sunday evening if you're in Europe, or Sunday morning. May you enjoy the spring weather.
And may you all enjoy this wonderful time, this joyful time of the year. You know, we look forward to seeing you on one of our future webinars soon. Takže ďakujeme, Weleslaw. Bolo nám cťou. Tešíme sa na budúce.
Dobre. Dovidenia. Ďakujeme.